Savvy Central Radio's official sponsor for our third annual Aviation Month is Winty Aviation T-Shirt Art. Winty is an aviation-themed t-shirt business designing and printing aviation-related graphics for pilots, aviation businesses, and aviation enthusiasts worldwide. Winty can print 1 or 100 garments upon request within a reasonably low turnaround time, including a one-stop shop solution for all your graphic art needs, from logos, business cards, book covers, and banners. Contact winty.com today in order to find out how your design could become a reality. Get ready and start your engines for our third annual Aviation Month on Savvy Central Radio, where 8 aviation businesses share their knowledge and wisdom. Our guest today is Wayne Gorsek, founder, chairman, and CEO of DrVita.com, Nature'sLab.com, and DrVitaLab.com. In this show, Wayne will share the ingredients necessary to create a successful business and/or be an accomplished proficient pilot. DrVita is one of the few companies that manufactures and lab tests their own brand in-house. Wayne has invested over $26 million of his own money to create the most advanced and superior manufacturing, lab, and distribution technology. Prior to DrVita, Wayne founded VitaCost.com in 1994. VitaCost.com became the #1 online retailer in the supplement space from 1994 to 2009. In fact, revenues were 400 to 500 times higher than GNC.com in 2009. To find out more, visit DrVita.com, DrVita.com. Hi, Wayne. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you for our third annual Aviation Month. I'm so excited that you could come out and join us. You have an amazing story that you have to share with the audience. I mean, you have several companies all in the line of vitamins, but you are also a jet pilot. And so, wow, get started by telling us a little bit about your journey. What led you to the wonderful world of aviation, health, and creating not one business, but several successful businesses?
Well, it's quite an interesting story going back to my birth, actually. My grandparents, mother's parents, adopted me and raised me from out of the hospital when I was born. And my grandfather worked at Scott Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois, where I grew up. And I'm sure that's visiting him at the Air Force Base was always very proud for me. And I'm sure that's what inspired me to take up the love of aviation and passion for aviation. In fact, I remember my grandfather taking me to the library and letting me check out books on aviation, airplanes, Air Force, NASA. And I used to study all the instruments when I was in grade school and could tell you what each instrument did. And I'd have dreams of flying airplanes when I was a young child.
Wow. So what really pulled you to going through with it and getting your license? Because a lot of people say, oh, I've always wanted to do that, but they don't really go through with it.
You know, extreme passion and desire to do it. In fact, I was afraid of heights when I first started flying, and I would get out after dual instruction in a 172 Cessna, shaking. I was so scared. And, you know, I had a lot of fears I had to overcome when I was in training. And I remember being on cross-country solos to long distances, get into some turbulence, get a little scared, have to land, calm down, get back in the plane and finish the mission. And it took a lot of patience and overcoming some fears. But I had such an incredible desire to own and fly airplanes that that's really my only hobby, to be honest with you. A lot of guys play golf and into sports, but aviation is my hobby and passion.
Yeah, well, I can see that. And how do you stay proficient and current, being as busy as you are?
Well, I worked my way up. I'm on my 5th airplane, 2nd new jet, my Embraer Phenom 300, and I had an Embraer Phenom 100 prior. I'm single pilot typed in both the 100, 300. Also have a type rating in Premier 1A. And I worked my way up, though, from Commander 112, single engine prop, to a twin engine Cessna 310Q, and then to a Diamond DA-42 Twin Star, and then the jets. And I try to fly every week or two. I've got a second home in Oregon, main home in Las Vegas. My main company that makes vitamins DrVita, DrVita.com, is in Las Vegas, so I have to spend a lot of time there, of course. And that's a beautiful 2-hour flight back and forth. I try to time my flights at sunset, which are so stunning up and down the West Coast. And so I try to stay very proficient. I go to CAE in Dallas every year and do recurrent training as a single pilot, which basically means I have to do all the same emergencies and flight skills to a crew, to ATP standards of a crew, but do it all alone. And then I have an extra day of training they give me to do the stuff the FAA doesn't require, like dual engine failures and single engine failures at rotation to IFR minimums, with all the panels failed and only the backup instrument to survive off of, which the FAA doesn't require. But I want to know if I'm having a really, really bad day, I can survive it.
Wow, I love that. And in the beginning of your story, what I like that you mentioned is that you had to overcome fear and challenges, because I'm sure a lot of people out there let that stop them, the fear. Or one guy in particular, when I was taking some flight training, he threw up for the first 14 flights.
Oh.
But came back every week. And that was passion and persistence. I mean, because a lot of people after 1 or 2 flights, I keep throwing up, okay, this isn't for me. But you want to be a pilot if you keep coming back.
Exactly. And, I had 2 things I was challenged with. I grew up in a 14 by 70 mobile home. And, my grandfather at one time had a fair amount of wealth, but he sold off his land and farms and homes and, ended up not having a lot of wealth when I knew him. And he worked as a civilian at the Air Force Base on a very modest income. And I grew up in a 14 by 70 mobile home, and I did not have the money initially to afford flight training and own an airplane, but I worked really hard, 60, 80 hours a week, and worked my way up from minimum wage jobs. I dropped out of high school. I got a GED, and I worked my way up. And what my goal was to make myself work hard, work smart, and be persistent for many, many years was airplanes. My goal was to own a new jet and be type rated to fly that new jet. And I accomplished it not once, but twice now.
And I'm hearing something different that differs from a lot of other pilots I hear talk these days, in that you not only went out there and did everything it took to get your pilot license, but you continue to learn. It didn't just end with your pilot license. You continue to learn. It's an ongoing journey for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. I actually take time every week to watch some of the aviation videos you can even get on YouTube, where they reenact the crashes that happen, so that I try to learn about why planes are crashing, particularly jets, and and how not to be, one of those victims. In fact, I've worked with the executives and directors at Embraer and CAE with ideas on how to improve their training, and they've actually taken my ideas and they've improved the training as a result. They now, instead of just teaching the same old stuff in recurrent that you learned in initial, they've actually redone their recurrent to where now they focus on real world accidents and why they happened and how to prevent them in training now. So I feel very proud that I've been able to affect positive change with Embraer, CAE. In fact, I pushed Embraer to upgrade their TCAS systems in the Phenom 300 to the newest 7.1 technology, which is 400% more effective at preventing a midair than the 7.0 TCAS 2. And I was the first Embraer jet owner to get that new technology in my TCAS system.
Wow. So what would you say? Because I'm hearing from you that you continually learn not only from watching others' mistakes, what happens when they crash, why do they crash, and you continue to go over the emergency procedures. How important is doing that, you think, for the average pilot, a general aviation pilot?
Critical. Very sadly, general aviation has a terrible safety track record. If you compare GA accident rates versus commercial on a per hour basis flown, I want to say GA accident rates are approximately 100 times worse than commercial. And I operate my plane under commercial standards. It's actually on charter at Clay Lacy at Van Nuys when I'm not flying it. And the way Clay Lacy operates the airplane is to the same standards as a commercial airliner, Part 135. And, and having well-trained pilots, crew, proper maintenance, training every 6 months for the commercial guys that are flying charter customers every year for myself as a Part 91 pilot, I think is very critical. I think GA lacks optimal training, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I've noticed I've gone to quite a few pilot meetings, and one in particular I went to was in aerospace. And they were, quizzing people in the audience, okay, what is e-airspace? And most of the people who were active pilots could not answer simple questions. And the same thing happened when I went to a weather seminar. And I said, wow, this is a little scary because these guys are out in airplanes, but they can't answer simple day-to-day questions that you would have to deal with in the cockpit. So that begs me to ask, why do you think so many GA pilots don't really go out there to really get the extra knowledge?
They don't spend enough time. There's not enough passion, commitment. They need to think like a commercial professional pilot and try to strive for those standards. And if they don't have the time or the passion to do that, they probably shouldn't be flying, to be honest with you. They really need to put a fair amount of time into training, and I think simulator training is critical. I would never fly with a jet pilot that does not have simulator training. They are dangerous, in my opinion.
So I can see that this same determination and joy to learn you also do in your business, don't you? Because I think you apply it in all areas of your life.
Well, I'm a big believer that if you're going to do something, choose what you're most passionate about and become the best at it. Become the top 1%, and that's how you become successful. You got to do something. Choose a career that you're passionate about and something that you are capable of being the best at, and strive to become the best at it.
And when I was reading about you before we came on board here to talk, I was really intrigued about what you pulled together. I mean, you've had 3 that I can see, or maybe more before that, DrVita.com, DrVitaLab.com, Nature'sLab.com, all surrounding vitality, health, vitamins. What brought you to this field of health and vitality and working in vitamins and such?
Christina, it goes back to my grandparents again. The fact is, as I entered my teen years, they entered their 70s and their health started to rapidly decline. My grandfather developed Parkinson's, where you get rigid and shake, developed arthritis, heart failure. My grandmother, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, heart failure, depression. I thought doctors had the solutions, took them to a lot of different medical doctors. They tried a lot of different drugs and surgeries, and nothing really seemed to prevent the progression or affect a cure. And I started doing my own research in medical school libraries, nights and weekends, and discovered the power of nutrition, that the real way to stay healthy and the real way to even reverse a lot of diseases of aging was nutrition. And that includes diet, healthy foods, and getting toxic foods out of your life like soda and fried foods and processed fast foods, and eating, healthy, organic, whole type foods like nuts and broccoli and cauliflower and wild-caught salmon. But then also, even the most perfect diet, you still need supplements. And at the time, to get a good supplement, I had to piece 8 to 12 products together. I remember doing this for my grandmother, and it actually reversed her type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and depression, where the drugs made it worse. But then what I discovered was that most people aren't going to do the research. Most people aren't going to go out and piece together 8 or 12 different supplements. And I came up with the idea to start a company that follows the science and actually makes nutritional products that really work. And one of the problems with most supplements that are currently consumed is they're made by drug companies. And the problem with that is the drug companies make 100 times more revenue when you get sick than when you stay healthy. And sadly, the whole medical education system is controlled by them. They're in bed with the FDA. The doctors, of course, have a profit motive, as does the hospitals. And the fact is that, when we get diagnosed with one of thousands or multiple forms of thousands of diseases, they all make a lot more money when we're sick than when we're healthy. And they actually have a disincentive to keep us healthy. So I ended up, my career thanks to my grandparents, just as my passion and love of aviation.
Wow. And this really brings to mind, and we spoke about this before the interview, because I've been working on bringing myself to a more healthier me. Now that I'm 45 years old, I had some major thyroid issues and such. And I thought, hey, I'm only 45 and things are starting to break down. And we also talked about the fact that, hey, if we're pilots and we're starting to break down, things are only going to get worse. Now, you mentioned a good diet, but how does supplements really help with your overall health and vitality? Because I know for me, I use vitamins when I start to feel low and a little under the weather. How can they help on a daily basis?
Well, the first thing to understand is that the younger we start eating healthy diets and taking quality, effective supplements, the better. Very sadly, children are ending up with very horrible diseases related to brain function and cell function because of all the toxic things in our water, air, food, the toxic fast foods, processed foods, soda being the worst offender with high fructose corn syrup, all the foods with monosodium glutamate or disguised names for monosodium glutamate in there, like hydrolyzed, and hydrolyzed anything is probably MSG disguised. And, these things are very toxic for us. And, we need to eat more of a organic, whole foods type diet with things like cauliflower and broccoli and spinach and wild-caught salmon and nuts. All nuts are really healthy for us. But most people consume way too little of those foods. And even if you do eat a perfect diet, you still need supplements, though. You still don't get enough vitamin D and B vitamins and selenium and zinc. Our soils are so depleted of those nutrients now. And, we really need quality supplements. But the RDA-based supplements are a total disaster. They don't have enough B vitamins. They don't have enough vitamin D, C, zinc, selenium. They're missing the best stuff entirely, like turmeric and green teas and CoQ10s that are all, proven in thousands of human studies to keep our cells healthy. And when I say cells healthy, I mean our heart, our brain, our vision. Like lutein, I've actually funded studies and created patented products that prove we can maintain and protect healthy vision with lutein and these high quality multivitamin products, but they have 24 to 100 times higher levels than the drug company made worthless junk and even harmful vitamins that most people take.
That is so disconcerting. And I had a guy on earlier this year, Gregory Smith. He's a doctor, a pain management doctor, and he really filled us in on how the drug companies are really benefiting out of us being sick. And it's really a sad state. I'm glad that companies like yours exist that counteract that. But now going back to our audience out here, because a lot of people tuning in will be business owners, but as well, some pilots. And what can they do to help keep their health and vitality alive so that they can keep their pilot license, or I should say their medicals alive, so they can continue to fly for years to come?
That's a good question, Christina. The number one reason pilots are being grounded is they can't pass their medicals because of vision problems with cardiovascular, brain, you name it. And so what I recommend, number one, very healthy diet, organic, whole foods diet with the healthiest things that I mentioned earlier. Moderate exercise is critical. Only takes about 20 minutes every other day is very effective. Also, a quality multivitamin is essential, but look for levels of vitamin D, of the active form D3, at least 4,000 IU per day. Most have a worthless few hundred IU per day. Look for products that have thousands, tens of thousands of percent of the RDAs of B vitamins, and look for the active form of B12 called methylcobalamin versus the cyanide form that most use called cyanocobalamin. The other thing you want to look for in the multivitamins is magnesium. We need magnesium more than calcium. Too much calcium actually doubles our heart attack rates.
Oh, wow.
Where magnesium reduces the mortality by 40 to 50%. Also look for copper-free. Copper, there's at least 5 studies now showing copper increases your heart attack risk as much as 300%, your overall mortality risk as much as 160%, and also may cause cancer and Alzheimer's. And we get more than enough copper from our diet. We don't want more from our supplements that can actually hurt us. And also avoid these drug company supplements where they say other ingredients and they're full of chemicals. You don't want chemicals in your vitamin. We get enough chemicals from our water, our food, and air. The EPA is totally a disaster at protecting us from toxic chemicals. There's thousands of chemicals they've approved that are known to cause cancer, Parkinson's, and they spray them on our food, and that's why eating organic food is critical. Using very high quality water and air filters are also critical to stay healthy.
Those are awesome tips, and I can relate to some of this. I just started last month, where I did mostly fruit juices and vegetables, and it was funny. My boyfriend would come over every weekend and go like, "There's no food in here." I'm like, "There is a whole bunch of food. You gotta, eat it. It's not packaged food, is what you mean." But what I found very intriguing is I'm a super chocolate fan, and I was eating quite a bit of broccoli, fresh broccoli, and I wasn't wanting any chocolate. And my friend said, "Well, that's because there's magnesium in the broccoli."
Well, yeah, the clearly a little bit of dark chocolate's actually healthy for you, and a little bit of red wine is actually very healthy for you. They're full of antioxidants. And some of the nutrients you want to look for in a good multivitamin are standardized turmeric that has 95% of the active curcumin. You want to look for green tea that's standardized for the active EGCG. You want to look for coenzyme Q10. Some of those nutrients I mentioned are more powerful than your ABC vitamin minerals, and most multivitamins leave them out entirely. Capsules are better than tablets. The only time you want a tablet is for like a chewable or sublingual. Capsules are easier to swallow, much quicker absorbed. You can make them all natural. You also need a good omega-3. Look for a fish oil that's got double, triple strength the normal of EPA DHA, which promotes healthy brain function and required for healthy cardiovascular joints. There's so many wonderful, amazing nutrients that can help promote our cellular health, promote our brain, cardiovascular, joint health. But the doctors, they're not taught. They're taught by drug companies. Yeah. And what little they know about nutrition is all wrong. The worst advice you can get about supplements and nutrition is probably from your medical doctor. It's very sad to say, but true.
Yeah, and they'll probably be the first proponent to say, "Well, let's pay attention to the medicine first, and maybe that side stuff on the side." They don't give much credence to vitamins or any alternative therapies.
No, it's a financial disincentive. If you stay healthy, they make a whole lot less money. I mean, you think about a cardiovascular surgeon that makes millions per year because you get heart disease. Does he really want to prevent heart disease? Does he really want to reduce his income by 80% and 90% even? And, so that's the problem we have. When I started my first vitamin company 20 years ago, healthcare costs were $1 trillion a year. And I said, oh my God, we're going bankrupt. They now have almost tripled. They're about 2.8 trillion a year. The amount of people consuming pharmaceutical drugs, and they're all toxic, they're all full of side effects, and they're all deadly, has tripled. It really is a total disaster. And it's because we're not learning how to stay healthy naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a guest on recently who said that she was appalled when she took her grandkids into a amusement park. And the only things available to eat, none of them were like real whole foods. They were all like prepackaged, I don't know, hot dogs or something really not healthy. And she said, wow. And then they say when you come into the park, well, you got to leave all outside food. So she's like, even if I wanted to bring bananas or fruit, they check your bag. It's
Unbelievable.
Like, yeah, it's nutters. It's like, well, I'm not going to that park.
Yeah, that's where we need to have a revolution. And also the way the school lunches are terrible too. You really have to pack your kid's lunch for him or her if you want a healthy lunch for your child. The school lunches are just plain terrible. And and my 12-year-old son, when he was younger and he'd let me go to lunch with him at school, I would look at the school lunch and say, wow, there's a few healthy items, but then the kids are all choosing the unhealthy stuff. You got to make it all healthy. And Then I'd look at the lunches that kids brought with them that the parents packed, and they were worse than the school lunches. They were full. The worst enemy we have for our diets is sugar, fructose, corn syrup. It's killing us. The latest studies on sugar show 4 times higher rates of heart disease, double the overall mortality rates, and double the pancreatic cancer rates, which kills you in a few months. That's what Steve Jobs died of, actually, and Michael Landon, the actor, and Patrick Swayze, also the actor.
Wow.
And, the sugar is what's killing us. It feeds the cancer cells and it destroys your immune system. And speaking of immune system, with all the viruses that are out there that are very, very deadly, as you're quite aware, I'm sure, in the media right now being covered, the key is your immune system. It's not vaccines. It's keeping healthy immunity, which requires a lot of vitamin D, 4,000 to 8,000 IU per day of D3, a lot of B vitamins, a lot of vitamin C, thousands of milligrams per day optimal, a lot of zinc, a lot of selenium, things like turmeric, garlic, amazing for immunity. Yeast extracts from a product called Epicor and mushrooms that have beta-glucan in them. You can naturally make your immune system extremely powerful, but what destroys it is sugar, fructose, corn syrup, absolutely decimating to your immune system.
Now, is there any difference between fructose, corn syrup, or just plain refined sugar? Because fructose, is that found in fruits? I mean, what's the difference, disparity between each?
It's a good question, and I hate to break the bad news to you, but fructose is twice as deadly as regular sugar, including high fructose corn syrup, and it's very, very bad for the body. And I only recommend a small amount of fruit and not as juice. I recommend it like raspberries or blueberries or apples, where you eat the whole fruit, but very minimal amounts, maybe a serving per day, because too much fruit, particularly concentrated as fruit juice, which takes out all the good stuff and concentrates the fructose, is actually very bad for you. I didn't want to say anything earlier, but you asked me the question. I'm going to be honest.
I'm quite intrigued, because interestingly, we had a guest on recently who was just saying that humans were meant to eat fruit, and I was like, well, I can't go there. I like some fruit.
That's not true at all. That's not. No, the science of nutrition is that the more healthy proteins and fibers and healthy fats you eat, the healthier you are. So like a perfect diet would be broccoli with walnuts and wild-caught salmon and maybe one serving of organic blueberries or blackberries or raspberries. I think the berries are the healthiest of all the fruits, or apple. That would be a healthy meal. But Steve Jobs, I actually suspect the reason he got pancreatic cancer at a very young age was overconsumption of fructose. He was a vegetarian.
Oh, wow. That's intriguing. Well,
I suspect that, and the science supports that, actually.
wow. Well, I've never been a super fruit fan. So when I had gone on my cleanse and did a lot of fruit juice, it was hard for me because I'm like, I'm kind of used to not a particularly wonderful lifestyle before. I was eating quite a bit of meat in particular. And so what I wanted to do is kind of pull back on all the protein I was taking and all the meat, and just like have maybe one small meal a day and just bring it back down, have low fat fishes for a month and not just have this high, because really I'm really prone to loving beef in particular.
Well, that's your body telling you that you're deficient in protein, you're deficient in zinc, you're deficient in B vitamins. Red meat can be very healthy for you if you get organic grass-fed and you don't burn it or char it. I will let my kids have, and I will personally have, a organic grass-fed, non-charred filet or New York strip. That actually can be very healthy for you when it's balanced with, of course, the broccoli and the cauliflower and the lettuces and the healthy vegetables and so on. It's all about the balance, and it's about the quality of the food you're consuming. So grass-fed, organic dairy and beef can be very healthy for you because it provides a lot of beneficial nutrients. Now, conventionally farmed, where they're using genetically modified corn to feed the cattle, is very bad for you. So you got to look at the quality of the food you're consuming. That's what's critical. And then you got to balance it where about 40% of your calories are from complex, healthy carbs
Mm.
with a lot of fiber in them, which broccoli would be one good example. And then about 30% of your diet should be healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil, wild-caught salmon, nuts like walnuts, things of that nature. And then about 30% of it protein, which again, wild-caught salmon would be a great source, grass-fed organic beef, dairy, nuts are all excellent sources for healthy proteins.
Wow. And I heard you mention there, don't char it or burn it. Why is that important?
It forms a lot of toxins. A charred steak is the equivalent of smoking 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes.
Wow. And I always have it well done, usually.
No, don't do that. Do it medium and non-charred because the char or the burn is very toxic, full of chemicals, and a charred steak is the equivalent of smoking 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes as far as the toxin load it puts on your body.
You've been so instrumental in teaching me so much here. Thank you very much for starting me out here in my education on health.
My pleasure. I love it. I wish I could just do the science part of my business. I love the science more than I love any other aspect of my business.
Well, I'm really hoping pilots out there and listeners, business owners out there will take heed to some of this advice and apply it to their life because no matter what you're doing in your life, if you're not healthy, everything else just falls apart.
Well, look at Steve Jobs. He created the most valuable company in the history of the world that peaked at a Fortune 1 rating, I think $700 billion, and he's dead at a very young age. Sam Walton, same story. He died of cancer younger than he should have. And, and I do believe the studies, thousands of studies support that if you follow the advice we're talking about as far as dietary, supplement, exercise, toxin avoidance, you can make a big difference. You can reduce your risk of most diseases by up to 90% if you do the right things.
Well, I'm definitely hoping to do that.
And the longer you do the right things, the more the benefits. So you might get a 10-20% reduction in risk rate in your first year, but after 5 or 10 or 20 years of following that same good behavior, we'll call it, you might reduce your risk 90%. It's pretty amazing. I mean, give you an example, vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
If a woman has low blood levels of vitamin D, which most do, sadly, because they're taking those worthless junk drug company made vitamins or no vitamins, they have 600% higher risk of breast cancer. If you have optimal vitamin D levels, which requires at least 4 to 8,000 IU per day, and the RDAs are worthless 400 IU per day of D. Depending on which cancer and which study you look at, you can reduce your risk by 50 to 90%.
Wow. Is there any sources of good food that offer vitamin D as well?
Not really. To be
Suckers.
honest, you have to get full body sun, no sunblock for 20 to 30 minutes every week. And you have to not take a shower or bath within 48 hours because it washes the vitamin D away before it's absorbed. And who does that, right?
No one. Yeah.
So really, I mean, your dietary levels of vitamin D are measured in the few hundred IU range, and the science and all the doctors I know that track vitamin D levels in their patients is very clear that you need 4 to 8,000 IU per day of D3 to have optimal levels. The RDA levels of a few hundred IU are totally worthless. Your dietary intake levels of a few hundred IU are totally worthless.
Well, this is very intriguing. Thank you, because I plan to study up a lot more on this. I definitely don't want breast cancer in the future.
No, and actually there's studies saying that once you've had the breast cancer, and they have temporarily effectively cured you, as they allege, if you have optimal vitamin D levels, your risk of that breast cancer coming back are dramatically reduced. So it's so critical to reduce your risk to begin with. But if someone's had cancer, keeping optimal vitamin D levels is very critical to prevent it from coming back.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure all the listeners out there will thank you too, because we've actually had on recently a woman who went through stage 2 breast cancer and built the Tiger Lily Foundation to help other patients dealing with breast cancer and to live a healthier life afterwards. So here's another way to do it, guys. Go to DrVita.com and get some vitamins today and get yourself healthy. So with everything you've gone through, building your company, becoming a pilot, a jet pilot, very proficient, what has been your most important lesson you've taken away from everything?
Strive to be number one at whatever you do. Always work hard, work smart to try to be the best at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's aviation and nutrition. And I want to be the best at formulating and manufacturing the best supplements in the world. And I want to own and be single pilot type rated where possible, which the Phenom 300 is the largest jet you can have a single pilot type rating in, and be the best pilot I can be. And my next goal is the Embraer Legacy 500, and that's not single pilot typed. You have to fly as a crew, which is okay. I always have one of my charter pilots fly as co-pilot for safety with me, even in my Phenom 300. But for me, aviation and vitamins, nutrition are just what I chose to be the best at. And somebody else may feel they want to be the best at making electric cars, like the Tesla
Mm-hmm.
founder.
Yeah. As of today, I mean, we talked about this earlier, that general aviation isn't what it could be. I mean, it doesn't have a great track record, but also the amount of pilots flying today are not as huge as it used to be. Why is that? What is there some possible solutions you might have for how we can build up general aviation? And also, why do you think it kind of lagged from where it was at one time?
Government, 100%. The government is our worst enemy. I think Ronald Reagan had a really famous quote, about government being not the solution but the problem. And the government is the problem. They've made the cost of airplanes and the cost of fuel and insurance so out of control. I mean, it's crazy what a new airplane costs. It's crazy what insurance costs, what fuel costs and maintenance and repairs and parts, and that's all government. Their regulatory schemes are very, very inefficient and not well thought out. And also, Ron Paul talked about this. He was the only presidential candidate of either party that talked about devaluation of the dollar. The government has destroyed the value of the dollar. A dollar today compared to 1913, when they created the Federal Reserve and got control of the dollar, is worth 2 pennies, 2 cents. And when they devalue the dollar, what does that do? It inflates the cost of everything. The cost of everything in America it's out of control. It's insane what we pay for fuel and utilities and insurance and airplanes and houses and cars and food, and the list goes on. And I blame the government 100%. They have destroyed the value of our dollar by basically printing all this debt, tens of trillions of dollars of debt they can't pay back, and also the way they've worked with the banks and the currency situation. They print dollars, but what's it backed up by? Nothing. They got off the gold standard, and as a result, they have devalued the dollar so much that it's made it almost impossible for most people to afford an airplane now and afford to fly the airplane and also own their own business. I think one of the greatest tragedies of the last 100 years, because of our government, is the only companies that can afford to pay to play in the current situation we're in are the Fortune 1000. If you look around today, virtually everything you buy and everywhere you shop is a Fortune 1000 company. It used to be 90% of people were self-employed and had their own business. That number has reversed to where it's probably under a few percent now, and that is a tragedy, truly a tragedy.
Wow, we need to come on and do a whole new interview on this. No, this topic has been burning me up inside, because when you see the Federal Reserve Bank, and people don't realize that this is not a federal It's not a federal bank. It's not owned by the government. It's not the government. It's a private entity run by really huge bankers who are really, this is totally set by design, everything that's happening with the overinflation of money in there, out there in the public, creating outrageous prices. I mean, I talked to some of my friends in Europe, and when they hear what I pay in rent in New York, they just fall over because they think I'm rich until they hear the expenses that I have to pay on a monthly basis.
Well, Christina, one good example is food prices. The government excludes food prices and energy prices from the CPI, and they tell us inflation's only a couple percent. And in reality, the last 12 months, food prices up 20%.
Wow.
And then when you compound that over decades, it's crazy. I mean, look at healthcare costs. I had my 3-year-old daughter climbed up on a chair, it fell on her, put a gash in her forehead out of abundance of caution and safety, took her to the local emergency room hospital. They put on some little stuff I could have done, little stitches that you just apply, by hand that stick on, cleansed it with some, antibacterial solutions and, stuff that, I got on hand here that cost a few dollars. And they probably spent about a total of actual 30 minutes with her. They gave her no tests, no exams, no shots, no x-rays, none of that stuff. And the bill was over $1,600.
Wow.
Over $1,600. That should have been like $100 or $200 bill. It is absolutely insane. Well, look at airplanes. I mean, you could have bought a new airplane, a new Beechcraft, Bonanza Baron in the 60s for tens of thousands of dollars. A new Baron today, I believe, is $1.5 million or $2 million or something crazy. I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts what the government has done to the value of our currency, how they've devalued our dollar and inflated the cost of everything. And so I blame the government 100% for the decline of general aviation, 100%, for multiple reasons.
Wow. Now, this is such a huge problem then, because because I see this starting at the ones who hold the most money, the Federal Reserve, the people behind the money who actually buy out our politicians and the candidates. How do you get at this problem and really begin to fix it when the government's really been bought out?
That's the problem. I mean, poor Ron Paul was telling the truth. I mean, he was the one honest, ethical person in the last presidential campaign of either party, and nobody wanted to hear the truth, other than maybe 14%, I think, supported him in the end. And that's the problem. You've got almost half the people on some form of welfare now. You got 80 forms of welfare bankrupting us at a cost of $1 trillion a year. And who are they going to vote for? The candidate that promises more welfare, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You got the percentage of people working working age down to lifetime lows of like 63%. You've got the government bought and paid for by every special interest group you can name, from lawyers to accountants to hospitals, doctors, drug companies, unions, foreign governments, the list goes on and on. And until the American people wake up and realize they have a corrupt and evil, bought out and paid for government and fire them and start over, we're screwed basically. I mean, we're done. Yeah. It's a bad situation. And that's the only way you fix it is for the voters to wake up and fire the 90% of the government that have been very inept and evil, and keep maybe the 10% that are not, and then reelect the 90% that would be like the 10%.
And this recalls to me a while back, I had a guest on that was talking about, well, if your doctor's not working on behalf of your health, fire him. Same goes with our government and anything that isn't working for your life. You have the power. And one guy came on and said, you think the corporations have to own you? Well, hello, purchasing power. Don't go and buy a certain corporation. If you see corporations are supporting things you don't believe in, don't go there.
Well, let me give you an example. Amazon.com was violating the state tax laws forever, where they had nexus or operations in states, but they were not charging, collecting, and paying the sales tax on what they were selling to those people. And so finally, the governments catch up with Amazon and say, hey, you can't do that anymore. You got to pay the sales taxes. And so you know what Amazon does?
Mm.
They decide, well, we're going to punish everybody. And so we're going to promote a federal law that's effectively a national sales tax on everything bought on the internet or mail order, no matter whether the company has a nexus in that state or not. Or facility in that state, and it punishes everybody. It hurts every company. It hurts every consumer. Amazon, in my opinion, is pure evil. They finally got caught for violating the law, so now let's punish everybody as a result. And so they're pushing this national sales tax, and it's just terrible. And I will say, eBay is opposing it. eBay is a good company opposing the national internet sales tax, whereas Amazon is actually behind it and pure evil.
Go eBay. Yeah, but that's how you can support everyone out there. Is for one, as you said, go out there and research for yourself. Don't take anything anyone ever says to you on a podcast. Go out there, research, learn continually, as Wayne is doing here, continually be that student of life so that you can better not only your own life, but the country and just the world on a whole. So when you see something that's not in integrity with what you believe in, you have the power not to purchase with them, not to have them as part of your life. You can fire your doctor if he's not doing, working on behalf and having integrity for you, or as you see other patients, or if you see a company not operating integrity, passing laws that don't benefit the whole, you have the ability to not shop at that place.
Exactly. Voting your pocketbook is the most powerful thing. And then we also have social media, email, internet, where we can also share that knowledge with others and educate people that that this company is on our side and trying to do good things, and this company is not on our side and doing very, very bad things. And if you study the drug industry, they're pure evil, and they're in bed with the FDA. They own the FDA, bought and paid for, and FDA knowingly approves drugs that double heart attack rates, kill people, don't cure anything, but that's okay. That's okay. They get away with it, and so you should vote your pocketbook to stay off drugs. There's no safe drugs. I mean, they're not even over the counter, not cold medicines, not pain medicines. There's not one safe drug. And I'm not saying, hey, if you got a pneumonia and the right antibiotic can save your life, that's another discussion. But trying to treat chronic degenerative diseases of aging with drugs is a disaster. I witnessed it firsthand. It's awful. And it's no better. It's no better today than it was when my grandparents were alive. It's no better today.
And I found myself dealing with my Graves' disease, hyperthyroid, that their options were to rip it out, destroy it, or, poison it. And I'm like, hey, how about the fixing of the thyroid? How about that option? Well, that's not one of the options on the table. So, but here's the thing. It's not awful. It's not disastrous because you have the power. Like, I started to eat more healthy now, pay attention to what's going in my body. We can all help ourselves out and learn bit by bit and increase our lives, make our quality of living better, our health better. So we don't need to be a victim of the drug companies, pharmaceutical companies, or whatever. We don't have to be victims. We have the power to make changes.
I was just reading a book on psychiatry written by the psychiatrist who issued what's called DSM-4, which is their Bible for diagnosis and treatment of psychiatric disorders. And they're coming out with came out with a DSM-5, and he's so upset about how they're trying to take normal behavior like a temper tantrum in a child and make it a disease so they can prescribe a drug. And all the, how the drug companies are so, and even the researchers and the doctors are so in bed together to take every normal part of aging and every normal emotion and behavior and make it a disease so they can diagnose it, treat it, and get reimbursed. It's crazy, out of control.
Nutters. But everyone go out there and do some research so you can make yourself a healthier, happier person and not have to be a victim of anything. And so, Wayne, what's on the horizon for your business? Is there any exciting things coming up in the next year?
Well, I'm very excited about a new immunity product coming out called Immunity Synergy. And what I did is I looked at every nutrient with good human clinical studies that supports healthy immunity, And there were so many nutrients I found, from the vitamin C, A, D, B, zinc, selenium, yeast extracts, mushroom extracts, beta glucans, and turmerics. The list just went on. And I created a new immunity product that'll be out in a few weeks, and very, very excited about that. Actually have a lot of my products being sold on Costco.com. And one day, hopefully, the stores, as they do well on the .com, the store buyer will add them in the stores. But if you go to Costco.com, Nature's Lab is my brand, and I make actually a few of the True Nature products now. That's their brand, like their new improved resveratrol formula, which is from ingredient from red wine. That's amazing, and also a memory product we just launched for them, and so a lot of new science coming out, a lot of amazing new formulas we're creating to help people stay healthy. And my biggest concern right now, of course, is immunity. And good multivitamin is critical. But then I've got this new immunity synergy product coming out to bolt onto the multivitamin to even take it to another level.
And so where's the best place? Can people get this at their supermarket, or should they just go straight to your website? Where's the best place for them to get all your vitamins?
Best place is DrVita.com, DrVita.com. The other option is if you go to Costco.com and search Nature's Lab. That's my brand, and then the several True Nature products under Costco we make. They're astaxanthin, which is a carotenoid from algae with a lot of amazing benefits and studies, and their new improved resveratrol product, and their new improved memory product I formulated and manufacture.
Wow. Well, thank you. This has been such an enlightening talk. You're awesome. We have to have you back to talk about money and government and all that jazz. But I want to thank you again, Wayne, for coming to Savvy Central Radio. But before we head on out, is there any last words of advice you'd like to leave our audience with?
Don't trust the government.
We've already established that, yes.
Yeah, they're our enemy. As you said, do your own research, due diligence, and on any topic for that matter. And, number one most important thing is your health. If you don't have your health, nothing else matters. So put higher priority of better quality vitamins, better quality food, moderate exercise, toxin avoidance using air filters, water filters, organic non-GMO foods, reduce your stress. And then as far as career or business, choose what you're most passionate at, strive to become the best, work hard, work smart, and be patient and persistent. It takes 5, 10, 20 years to accomplish anything worth talking about. If you study any major successful company or person, it did happen overnight. My last company, for it to become number one in its space, Inc. 500 Hall of Fame, and NASDAQ IPO, and then recently purchased by Kroger, a Fortune 100 company, it took 12 to 15 years before it really hit its major success. And if I would have gave up in the first few years, I would not have that success. And so be prepared for a lot of adversity and overcome it, and work hard, work smart, and never accept failure, and only surround yourself with ethical, quality people. If you look at the 3 to 5 people you surround yourself with and spend the most time with, that's what you become. And that can be really good or really bad. If they're really good people, that will help you. If they're bad people, it will hurt you. And so be very careful of the people you surround yourself with, those 3 to 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yes, absolutely. And I like that you mentioned stick it out there, that it's not an overnight thing whenever you're reaching for success or whatever your passion is that you want to explode into success. I think often people will see the end result of what eBay has accomplished or you have accomplished and think, wow, it feels like you did it overnight, when in essence it took years of patience, tenacity, and really going after it.
It took me 15 years for my prior company to become extraordinarily successful. And then it took, as far as owning and being type rated in a jet, it took me about 20 years to accomplish that goal. So the two goals that were my number one goals took between 15 and 20 years to accomplish. And it did take 60 to 80 hours a week of dedication and sacrifice to accomplish this.
Mhm. But it's well worth it in the end. I mean, that's one thing. I've had, I think you know him probably, Michael Combs, the 5-time world record holder. He light sport aircraft, went around the world in a light sport aircraft. Or I should say it's 50 states in a light sport aircraft.
Well, no, I do not know him actually.
Oh, you'll love him. Check him out. He came on and he said, people come up to me in events and say, wow, you're so amazing. I wish I could do what you do. And he said, the only thing different about me and most people is that I just didn't stop. I didn't give up.
Right. Yeah. Don't give up. You don't accept failure, and you got to be persistent for a lot of years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. It's been so awesome having you here tonight, sharing with our audience your wonderful wisdom. Thank you so much, Wayne, for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
Oh, my pleasure, Christina, and thank you for having me.
For your chance to win an official Savvy Central Radio 3rd Annual Aviation Month t-shirt, like our page at facebook.com/Savvy Central Radio. For those interested in joining our Savvy family or being a paid sponsor or interviewing with us, contact us at savvycentralradio@gmail.com or 718-713-2289. And remember, we want to host the programming you're interested in. If you have a guest you'd like to hear on Savvy or a topic you'd like us to cover, please let us know.